Hey everyone, awesome fellows class. Hi, I'm Ilya Fushman. I'm one of the partners at Kleiner. Excited to be here. How many of you are at Harvey? Raise your hands. The obvious ones are the sweaters. All right. I think Harvey, you guys grabbed a lot of fellows this year.
Next year will be all of them.
All of them?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That's not possible.
Not allowed.
Not allowed. Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. Excited for this panel. I was fortunate to meet Gabe and Winston in 2023. Lead their Series B, invest in the C, invest in the Series D, and now co-lead the Series E very recently. And that's all just due to how well the company has done. It's an incredible company that's really, I think, set the footprint for what it means to build a vertical AI company in the enterprise. And the opportunity to transform legal professional services is massive. It's a huge market. It touches pretty much every meaningful company in the world. And we're incredibly excited to be investors. In fact, we're just chatting about this. When we saw kind of one of the early demos of ChatGPT, we went back and we said, hey, what can this technology apply to? And we quickly zeroed in on there are going to be large labor pools, lawyers, doctors, software engineers, salespeople, nurses, pretty much most professionals will have some form of co-pilot or agentic supporting experience. And we sort of said, hey, we really need to go find the AI lawyer, the AI software engineer, the AI doctor. The pursuit of Harvey really came out of that. So we'll do kind of an open panel. I think we'll have some questions later, but maybe we'll do some intros. Gabe, we'll start with you.
Sure. I'm Gabe, one of the co-founders. Prior to Harvey, did AI research, so started my career out at Google Brain, doing kind of core deep learning research, then DeepMind. Left DeepMind to do a personalized education startup, which a bit too early for AI, and found out education was not as profitable of an industry as legal. Went back to Meta, worked on the LLM team there, and this was kind of around GPT-3, and was roommates with Winston, who's my co-founder and a lawyer at the time, and that was kind of how we got into Harvey. And then right now mainly work on client-facing stuff, AI strategy, things like that, and some technical stuff, but have largely handed the technical stuff over to Siva.
Yeah. Cool. Hey all. So I joined Harvey about 6 weeks back. Before that, I was in a company called Motive. Ilya, again, was an investor there, so we kind of knew each other before this. And I was there for 6 years. It builds AI cameras that keeps the road safe and prevents accidents. I spent 6 years before that, or maybe 7 years at Twitter. I ran most of their consumer product machine learning teams there. Was responsible for basically taking their chronologically sorted timeline to make more ML sorted or whatever relevant timeline to you. And that helped find the best content for people and have them more engaged. And before that, I was in Yahoo Labs. And so, I mean, pretty much my entire career, I was in some form of AI, ML, and applied machine learning. But I think I'd say in the 20 years, whatever Gen AI has done to the world, we have not seen the same level of rapid change. And when I met Winston and Gabe, it was clear that these guys are just trying to solve almost the complex problems that you will see in the world through AI. So super excited to be here and super excited to meet you all. Happy to share any experiences. Feel free to, take my email and happy to chat with you. So, and we have Annie, who joined on the same day as me.
Yeah, we started on the same day, fun fact. But yeah, hi, my name is Annie. I'm currently an engineering manager for a team called New Verticals. Prior to Harvey, I was at a super duper early stage, pre-MVP, pre-MF startup. And before that, I was at Brex for a little under 4 years. And then even before that, I was at Nova Credit, which is a Kleiner Perkins startup, which was great. But yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm also on the board of Nova. All right, it all comes together. Well, maybe we'll start with you, Gabe, and get a little bit go back memory lane.
Yeah.
Like, how did you guys decide to start a AI legal company when everybody was saying applications are just wrappers
Yeah.
around GPT? And
Yeah, so I think we actually started before people were even saying that.
Okay.
So when we started the company, GPT-4 wasn't actually out yet. And so I had been brainstorming startup ideas with a couple friends from Google Brain. We were all researchers, so we were all thinking of like very horizontal assistant-like products. And at one point, we were all at my apartment. Winston was my roommate, and he showed me all his legal tech. He was an associate at O'Melveny. And my favorite example was their document search to search maybe like 1,000 or 10,000 documents would take like 5-10 minutes. And he was like, I do the search, and then I go on Instagram for a bit. The client gets billed for this, and then I find the file. And I was just like, this is crazy. And all the workflows were so text heavy that we were like, there's something here in legal, but at the time it was kind of like GPT-3, 3.5, and so the models weren't good enough. And then the friends that I had been talking to went to OpenAI. We met Sam and Brad, pitched this to them, and they were like, oh, let us show you something. And they showed us kind of GPT-4 before it came out. And when we used that, it was like, oh, this is the thing that is going to like change a lot of these like vertical industries like legal. And from there, it was like pretty obvious what to build with it. And I think like a nice timing thing was like got early access and started showing this to lawyers and figuring out what to build with it. But that was pre-ChatGPT. And then I think once we started getting some traction, that's when you got a lot of this like wrapper conversation.
And one, like, what were some of the maybe controversial or
Yeah.
difficult choices you had to make early on? Or
Yeah,
decisions you had to
the
make
biggest
early on?
one we got is definitely the advice we got from everyone was like pick one specific use case or one specific task and just go solve that. I think now it's relatively obvious of like the magic of ChatGPT and all these models is like, oh, it does everything. But at the time, that felt very intuitive to us. But I think it was something that like traditional startup advice at the time was like, you need to pick a very clearly defined like pain point or use case and solve that. And we very much went to like, no, this is going to do all of legal. And I think that framing let us build a company where if you had gone the other route, you kind of get stuck if your company is just like NDA drafting and then you're kind of stuck there. Whereas doing this more horizontal one, I think let us expand into what Harvey is today.
And when did you know that you have product market fit?
I think pretty early on. So the first customer we landed was Allen and Overy, and we landed them prior to ChatGPT coming out, and at the time the product was basically like we took GPT-4 and like put a UI on it, and we're like, ask this legal questions, and we showed it to a partner at Allen and Overy, and they were just like, what is this? Like, we've never seen anything like it. And they were like, okay, let's do a small pilot. And that pilot quickly started like doubling and doubling and doubling. And by the time we like signed a pretty large contract with them, like they were something at like, I think like 70 or 80% of their users were using it every day. And so really quickly it was like, oh, there's something super, super interesting here. And that kind of validated like, okay, let's go after these like big law firms and see if we can replicate this.
Awesome. Maybe switching gears, Siva, you've been through pretty much every wave of ML
Yep.
and AI. What's different about this one?
Most of the ML models, the way it's used is pretty much like you have large data, and you use that data to like, improve your ranking, improve your click prediction, improve your like engagement models, whatever, like and drive towards some optimization. That's where machine learning was pretty much used. And obviously there were topic models where generative models were used, but pretty much they were constrained in very limited domains, didn't have practical applications forever. But once, like the LLMs came and it becomes a general purpose problem solver, like we could instantly see, as Gabe said, like it solves real human work. And that's a aha moment. Like, again, now, like we know, like when you do benchmark study that a human actually might fail in many of these benchmark like tasks that AI can do better. But in order to realize it, like you got to put the bells and whistles, you have to like build product on it, you have to get the the trust of the customers to build the integrations, and that's where the issue is. So for me, that's like huge. Like whatever I've seen, like multiply that by like 100,000, like you still wouldn't meet the bar of what's going through. And we are just getting started, is what I believe. Yeah,
that's awesome. Maybe Annie, question for you: how do you think about building domain-specific AI? Can you share a time when the solution wasn't as obvious?
Yeah, so within domain-specific, building AI or AI tools within like that is domain-specific, something that wasn't very obvious was, right now our team is building something called Harvey for Word. You can think of it as Cursor for lawyers, and so lawyers spend a lot of time in Microsoft Word, drafting documents or editing documents, reviewing documents, but now they have Harvey on the side to prompt it to make the document more concise or to explain what's going on. And so one of the things that we were recently talking about is if we want to apply some changes on top of existing changes, some of the engineers thought, oh, like we should just like do what Cursor does, which is you just accept the existing changes and then we send that to the LLMs and then like make edits on top of it. But then that's actually not what lawyers want. What lawyers want is they love red lines. Well, they don't love red lines, but they like red lines and they want them to stay there. And so we had to make edits on top of the existing edits and preserve like all the edits and like show who made this edit and that edit and that edit. And so it wasn't like intuitive for engineers who's used to like Cursor, for example, but really helps to have all these like amazing lawyers and ALRs at Harvey who can tell us more about what our customers are like and what they prefer.
Yeah, how do you sort of change the mindset from building Cursor to building for lawyers?
I think it's just reading through a lot of like customer feedback, sharing that with the team. Also helps a lot that we have multiple engineers embedded in, or lawyers embedded into our team who daily dog food our product with us. And so just, getting their input is super helpful.
Awesome. Siva, many fellows here have the ambitions of being kind of founding engineers or founders themselves. You've worked with a number of great founders and founding engineers. Like, what does it take?
Yeah, I think it's actually an unsolved problem. Just to be clear, you probably know a better answer than me. So from what I have seen, I can draw out some patterns of successful founders, and if you can emulate that, then I think that gets you there. So one is like extreme levels of customer empathy and understanding of a domain space, and are ready to do pretty much everything. Like I know, like the founding stories of previous company where Obaid and Shoaib of Motive would go to truck stops and talk to all the drivers and figure out what they're using. They sit with the truck and drive with them for like 12 hours and figure out what they're doing. And then based on that, they came up with a concept and solved a product. And most of that is MVP, build a prototype, show it quickly, get feedback loop, and go and solve for it. So high levels of scrappiness, ownership, but more importantly, also as Gabe mentioned, it's just like connecting the dots between what the customers are trying to do and what technology allows them to do it. So I think that's what makes founding engineers special. They're able to connect the existing technology landscape of what is capable to the customer problem, and then quickly building something end to end and trying to validate it. And whoever ends up validating it, then there's the next step, which is like a lot of companies fail before Series A, Series B, Series C. There's a lot of scaling aspects of it. How do you escape velocity at each stages? That requires like, complete retransformation. And somebody who came, I forgot the name, somebody from
From Dropbox?
Yeah, Instacart came a couple of...
Ravi.
Ravi came, and he said something that was very interesting, which is like, it doesn't matter if you are finding the product market fit once. It's like every few months you have to find product market fit again and again. And if you don't, then you die. So that's what happens to many companies. So as founding engineers, that's a core principle. Like you have to be always obsessed with connecting the dots, what the customer wants, and finding the product market fit. And just keep doing that forever. Like I think you can see a real world example of Microsoft finding product market fit by taking all their desktop software and putting in cloud after Satya came to picture. And just huge for a company of that size and that thing to do it. So that's a founder mentality in my opinion. Yeah.
And maybe Gabe, what were you looking for in your first few hires, engineering hires?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest is just like obsession. Like I think you need people that are like gonna be all in, and I think BK was like an amazing example of this. Of like at the time the way we interviewed like early engineers was just like come and work with us for the day, and it was like, you know, come code with us for like 6 hours, and at like 11 p.m. we like had to kick him out, and then he came every day for like the rest of the week and did that, and you could just feel of like he already was just like so deep in it, and it was just that feeling of like this person is going to be as obsessed with this as you. And then obviously they need to be like super talented. He was an early engineer, or his first engineer at Superhuman and things like this. But I think that was the important thing. And I still look for that now. Like I think one of my favorite Siva stories is even at 1,000 engineers at Motive, he's still the first person to jump into incidents, which we talked about is like a bit insane. But like that is, I think, what you need to like really build these things.
Yeah, I don't want to do that anymore.
And then how was your first day?
Yeah, first day, oh, that's a good one. So I was there at 6 a.m., woke up, and then I get a message from Winston, hey, is the product done? Hey.
I saw the dashboard over there. It was all green.
It was all green.
Fixed it.
It was
Yeah.
F0. I mean, everything was down. I was like, dude, like this is not how
We
I
set
want
that
to
up for you. We set that up for your first
It's
day.
perfect.
Yeah.
It was like,
Yeah. Maybe just to describe a little bit, like how has just product engineering development evolved, generally speaking, like building software now versus building software 3, 4, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, like the biggest one is a lot of it's 3-4 years back, many of these big companies had exclusive access to like models on the AI side, but also had access to like technologies like Bigtable. Google had access to it, or like monitoring solution like Datadog wasn't that well adopted. I mean, I'm talking about 10 years back, but in general, like the technology was just like locked into specific advantage. But in the last 4 or 5 years, everything is democratized. Everything is access through API. So building any company, like a single, somebody showed me, somebody came to an interview and he showed me an app that he built like in a phone. I was super cool. It's like, you know, it's just type bunch of things and it produces like a story, and you press a button, it produces a physical book for your children to read. And like, I was super impressed, like, hey, what are you going to do with this? I'm going to launch it. Great. So a single person can actually build an end-to-end product that actually could work. I actually was thinking to show that to my kids to actually produce a book for themselves. It's great, right?
Yeah.
And that's what has changed. Like, you know, it took mountains to get access to all these technologies and stuff to build a company. Now it's like a single person can like pretty much build it. Yeah. I can see that for life.
Maybe one thing to add that to me has been an interesting challenge is it feels like as the models get better, the optimal UI changes. And so like an example for coding that I think we're starting to see is like when the models weren't very good, you needed like an IDE, and as they get better, you're getting more and more into like, oh, just submit a pull request. And I think we're starting to see that as well, where early on we had to put more stuff around the models, and then now can you move to just this is through email or something like that. And so I think there's a bunch of interesting like UI questions that I think traditionally you kind of had this like fixed UI and it didn't change if, you know, your recommendation algorithm got better or something like that.
That's cool. Maybe back to the founding engineer side of things. Annie, you were a founding engineer. Mm-hmm. What was that like, and what lessons did you learn? What advice would you give? Should people do it? Not do it? Is it a good idea?
Yeah, so I found the founding engineer role because I found out that one of the co-founders of Glean, and I was a huge fan of Glean, quit to do his own startup. And so I cold DM'd him, and that's how I started working for him. So I blindly followed him. I realized that I think the traits that make a really good founding engineer would be ownership, high agency, grit, and helps a lot if you have product sense, because most likely you won't really have a product manager or a designer or a lot of things laid out for you. What I learned is you don't really have a feedback loop if you join a company really, really early. There are no customers, and so even if you build something really cool, there's no one to show it to. And so you're kind of stuck in this idea maze as you're trying to win over customers, and you try out all these different things. And I realized then that what really motivates me is being able to move the needle on metrics, or being able to visibly see that I gave back this person hours in their day because I automated something for them or made some feature. And I wasn't getting that at a tiny startup. And so that's why I came to Harvey, because at Harvey, there's a lot of customer demand, lots of things to build, lots of metrics that you can move the needle on. And so that's what I learned. But I still enjoyed my time. You get to wear multiple hats, and you do everything from building your own desk to shipping things. And so good experience, but maybe not for everyone. It wasn't necessarily for me, but I don't regret going through that.
Yeah, maybe a question for all of you. Like, when folks are thinking about joining an AI company as engineers, what questions should they be asking?
I know what question they commonly ask, which is like, what's the moat between like the foundation model company doing everything versus you, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you should ask that question.
Yeah, I think that's probably the most common one.
Yeah, I guess we went through everything is a wrapper to
Yeah.
applications matter to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like trying to figure out like what is the world going to look like in like 3, 5, 10 years, and like where does your company fit in relative to cloud providers, foundation models, other application layer companies. I think that's one important question. And then I think understanding like, does that company have a clear picture of that? And then what product are they building given that reality?
And what do you all think has enduring moats?
I think for us, the most important thing has been to look at what are the industries that are specialized enough where the foundation models won't do this out of the box. And so I think like a very famous example where this wasn't the case was copywriting. Like that was one where the models just got better and they were able to do this. I think legal is one where it's interesting, where it's like purely from a like technical difficulty of what top partners at law firms do, there is kind of a lot of differentiation between the models. But I think more interestingly, there is also regulatory and client law firm dynamics. And so like, do you have an industry that's complex enough that it's like ChatGPT isn't going to replace it? And I think that's what's been really nice about working in legal. It feels like that exists.
Makes sense. Agree.
I hope so.
Maybe back to Shiva, the point you made around you can just build an app. Like, what's the best way for folks kind of coming into a company like Harvey, or generally speaking, to have outsized impact? Like, how should somebody think about?
Yeah, I think this is a very good question, Ilya. So I think a lot of the times people just like follow what's been told and just like execute, and they get stuff done, and I think they get trained to just do it forever before they realize they just become good engineer. But that's fine. But many times you want to ask like, why are you doing it, and how does it matter to the business? Like, what are the alternative ways of doing it? Does there an existing solution that does it? And when you ask those questions, like then you see a different perspective, and your growth becomes like exponential compared to somebody who does not. And that is a secret that I always coach people whom I manage. And if you can connect your work to what your company's customer care about, and if you can always tell that story, your growth will be the fastest. And if you cannot, that means you are not doing the job well. So, and the sooner you can do it, better it is. But it takes time, because you have to understand like, why is this product built? Like, and you will not get the answer immediately. If you go ask it, people say some random stuff. That's not the answer. The true answer lies like elsewhere. So you have to keep digging until you find it. Yeah.
And Annie, thoughts on that?
To have an outsized impact, I think, just being able to prioritize and figure out, well, one, identify what is like the most important thing that I can be doing right now for the business, and then two, finishing that. I think the other thing is seeing obstacles as challenges to overcome. And so rather than being discouraged that like this is taking forever or that this is a blocker, just finding ways around it to get things done. It's kind of like the value that some other companies have around like run through walls. Like an example of a time when like I was able to do that, which I thought was like very cool, probably when I peaked in life, but at Nova Credit, we were launching a new product, and one of the first employees ever at Amex ran into an issue with our product, and we couldn't reproduce it. We tried on all different devices to hit the issue that they were hitting. For whatever reason, we couldn't, and then we found out that they were on this Windows laptop, and so we got all the Windows computers we can find, tried to do it, but then couldn't reproduce it. And so I just had the idea, like, okay, I'm just gonna run to the nearest Microsoft store and like load up Nova Credit on every single laptop and then see if I can reproduce it that way. And that's actually how we found out what the bug was, which was it was only happening for touchscreen Windows laptops. And so we were able to address the issue. And I think moments like that just like really motivated me. And so yeah, really would encourage you all to like think out of the box, see obstacles as challenges to overcome.
Yeah. That's why Annie works here.
Does Harvey work on Windows machines?
All law
the time.
firms.
I mean, I'm saying,
No, yeah, you don't have to develop on them, but all our users. No, I mean, it is actually an interesting question where it's like, I think someone joked where it's like one of the early designers was like, can I get the like 4K like Retina Apple display? And it was like, hey, our users are all on Microsoft. And so it's like, you do need to think about these things of like, what are the users using?
yeah, super cool story.
Yeah.
Yeah, how's just kind of the role of engineering evolving? This is maybe a question for all of you. Just given the amount of tools, large language models, like what does it mean to be an engineer? And what will it mean to be an engineer in the future?
I'll start with this one.
Go for it, Gabe.
I think to me it's actually similar to what we're seeing at law firms. I think it lets people work on higher level things. And so when I think of like, what do these models let you do if you're an associate at a law firm or a programmer? It's like they let you delegate a lot of the low level work, but you still need to really think about like, how am I architecting this? Is this gonna scale? Or if you're a lawyer, it's like, is there gonna be some weird thing in here of how I've structured this deal? And so I think we'll keep seeing that. I'm like pretty skeptical that in the next like couple years, these models get so good that you don't have principal engineers designing these systems. But it feels like they will let people kind of accelerate how quickly they can get to like that level of engineering.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Gabe nailed it. The only thing I would add to that is some of the core engineering skills will remain, that is able to design a system or scale a system or connecting a user problem to breaking into sub-problems on how we will, like scale it up for large traffic. I think those common themes will exist, but how you implement it is going to be using like any of this cursor or whatever, like to it. And maybe there'll be one day where it'll design itself and everything's great and then we can just all go back home. But I think it's going to be a while there. That's my prediction. Who the heck knows? You own anything?
Should people still study computer engineering and computer science? Yes.
Absolutely. You have to be a good engineer to know whether your AI is doing right code or not.
That's
right. In fact, the more, I don't know how many people use cursor, like after a while, you actually want to stop using cursor. It just messes up your code a lot.
Yeah. We get this question a lot of like, should people still go to law school? And I think it's kind of the same thing where it's like, I don't think these models will replace like the level of work that you're Microsoft and you want to buy Activision for $68 billion. It's like you still need a high level partner to like understand and structure that deal. And there is something about like if you don't go through that experience of becoming a partner the same way if you don't go work at Google for 10 years to learn how to build distributed systems, like no amount of using generative AI systems I think can like replace that learning. And so I think there is still going to be value. And when I think of it as like when these models are generating like entire code bases or entire deals, it's like when something goes wrong, at the end of the day, you're going to need some human to go in there and look for it. And so I think you're always going to need this expertise.
Yeah. Having said that, I think there's a new class of problems will emerge for engineers. It's not just the same class, like how do you scale vector databases? How do you scale how do you make sure the quality, it's a stochastic product. Everything is going to be like not consistent. It's the same thing that looks today is going to look different with new model coming up. How do you guarantee the same levels of quality? How do you put an evaluation engine there that is that you can make sure that your quality doesn't go down. So you have to have human in the loop, but you can't have too much human in the loop. There's the data privacy concerns, so security concerns. So it changes to a different, engineering changes to a different plane. And I think those skills need to be developed, and some like prototyping and all those stuff becomes much easier. So it's going to be like higher order work and a different type of work for a few years. Yeah.
Awesome. Maybe just switching a little bit more to the business side of things. Legal and professional services, long-standing, giant industry, set of industries, really. You've got folks like Lexus that you've actually partnered with in the world of software engineering. You've obviously got giants like Microsoft and Google. And so how do you see all of this evolve, like across incumbents, across startups, maybe just even kind of the relationship you have with Lexus? How did that come about? What does the future of that potentially look like?
Yeah. When we think of like what Harvey looks like longer term, I think the thing we really want to focus on is how do we solve the end problems. And so I think right now people are like very focused on like co-pilots and agents, but when you think of these like very large corporations, what they care about is how do I minimize my legal exposure? I have this litigation and I need to defend against it. I want to acquire this company. And so longer term, we want to move away from, how do you build XYZ agent and how do you solve a problem like help this company acquire this other company? And what does that look like in the future when these models are very powerful? And we think that's something where that ends up being so specialized. Like the large incumbents are not going to build things like that. And I think like a really good example of that is like one like legacy product in legal is a data room, which is basically Google Drive. But even that is specialized enough that there's companies that just build data rooms that have like some additional features that don't seem significant until you actually do an acquisition using Google Drive, which we've tried to do, and we like painfully learned why you need a data room and not something like Google Drive. And so that's kind of like longer term, I think, how we think this fits in. And then what was the second part was?
No, just how do you navigate that landscape?
Yeah, and then I think the challenging part is like there's a lot of different personas. So thinking as the company evolves, there is kind of like your associate at law firm persona, there is CIOs at law firms, there is managing partners at law firms that we're starting to talk to of what does your law firm business look like in the future. And then on the client side, there is general counsels, also CIOs, in-house lawyers. And so thinking about how all these parties that interact together and like potentially their jobs are going to change as these models get better. How does that all fit together and how does the product evolve as these models get better? I think is like a really challenging problem because the surface area of the product changes a lot.
Cool. Maybe before we go to any questions, what advice would each of you give to yourselves if you were sitting in these seats?
Oh man. I think if you really want to start a startup, I think it's gonna like, you need to be very like obsessed of it. And I think oftentimes it won't be the thing you think you're gonna do. And so I think for me, I had like for 10 years before I started Harvey, that was kind of like a singular goal. And I thought I was gonna do some startup in like personalized education. But I think it was like the thing that mattered the most was like spending a decade on, I am gonna start a company because I want to like apply AI to some problem that matters. And I think Harvey was not the company that I thought I was gonna do it. But I think spending that much time doing it kind of puts you in the position. And so I would say if it's something you wanna do, like don't give up and keep trying to do it. And it may take longer than you think. But it's definitely worth it, and it might not feel that way while you're doing it. But,
Don't do it.
yeah, potentially don't do it also. But yeah, that would be my advice.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not as ambitious as Gabe to spend 10 years thinking about for the rest of the pack. I'd say the key advice is like, if you are an engineer, like I'd say like learn good engineering. Like, it's important to not focus on breadth but depth for first few years, because there are different aspects of engineering that comes handy when you are building a company or when you are being successful, like from thinking about like how to convert a user problem to a UX, to a systems, to how do you do like deploys, how do you manage clusters, how do you put observability. I think there are different pieces of it, and one who learns the end-to-end stack well, like can have very high vertical potential. So trying to ignore pieces of it and think it's easy, like, can have issues later on. That's number one. Number two, I think in general, you can just be super successful if you are just have very high ownership and a super low ego human. Like if you just don't like care about like, hey, are people going to think I'm bad? Like, I'm stupid. You just don't think about it and ask questions. People will help you. And if you show high ownership, like there's no way that your growth will be stopping. Like you can become CEO, CTO, whatever you want. Yeah, that's my two advice.
I think for me, I think Big Sean rapped this, but grass is greener where you water it. When he rapped that in a song lyric, I thought it was amazing and definitely something that I always keep in mind. I think another one is, I think a boxer said this, Muhammad Ali maybe, but he said that sit-ups only count when they start to burn. And I think that applies to a lot of things in life. And so I usually keep those two things in mind when I'm going through challenging times.
Sweet. Cool. Are we doing questions? Yeah.
Your next question.
Yeah, well, firstly, thanks for the talk. Really enjoyed it. Kind of like a two-sided question. From a KP perspective, what stood out about Harvey? What's kind of been something that you've seen them do which really kind of captivated you guys? And then from a Harvey perspective, how has KP been as an investor? What kind of things have they done that were helpful? For folks who might be interested in starting companies, what's like a checklist or a kind of rubric you had that helped you evaluate them as an investor?
Yeah.
I'm happy to go first. Yeah, so I mean, we had this framework, like there's something interesting is going to happen in terms of applications of AI to legal professional services. And we'd known of Harvey actually even before we met. I think we were like a day late to the Series A, which still pains me.
Yeah. Sorry.
But they're actually, you guys had a direct competitor in a company called Casetext, which was more of a legacy legal tech company that had sort of adopted and tried to pivot to AI legal. That's probably the best way to characterize them. And then you had Winston and Gabe, who were like these kind of cowboys. Winston certainly was a lawyer for a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, enough.
While he was scrolling Instagram.
Exactly.
And Gabe was this, brainiac genius, software genius. And honestly, part of it was just the feeling that these two would probably crack this in a much better way than a more legacy-oriented company that was trying to pivot. Like it felt pretty clear to us, having seen a bunch of teams in AI, that having some domain awareness, but really being more AI native and AI focused was kind of the winning ticket, just from a sort of high-level perspective. Two, we did some customer diligence kind of behind the scenes, and it's pretty obvious, like people loved not just the product, but actually your team, like the founders. They're like, hey, these guys are on it. They sweat the details. They care about what they're building. And so all of these things, and then you kind of meet the people behind the company. And honestly, you walk out of, I think we had a brief meeting in our office. You two came down. They walked out of the room and we're like, we have to invest in these guys. Like, it's pretty straightforward. So there's a lot of signal that goes into it, but ultimately it's kind of this feeling that you really want to do this. Part of that ultimately was sort of the approach to the space and the ambition and really kind of the energy. Vibes maybe is like the term we use now, right? You got these vibes. But maybe to unpack it a little bit more thoughtfully, I think Winston and Gabe saw this opportunity to go after the high end of the legal market, which made sense because this is where really the dollars are. This is where the pain point's real. This is where the model cost doesn't really matter that much relative to how much you can charge and how much impact you have. And this is also where you had sort of this interesting component of just legal work where you have a multi-tiered review system built in. So you almost had sort of like human in the loop by default. And then the neat thing on the flip side is that these large law firms work with very large enterprises, and you have this kind of natural collaboration bridge. So when Gabe talks about the kind of collaboration data room product, which is called Vault, I spent a bunch of my formative years at Dropbox. It sort of was a little bit of an aha moment, like, hey, if you build this, you get a bunch of lawyers to collaborate across company boundaries, you get a nice viral loop, and you can create kind of a collaboration network on top of it. And so you not only will you have a kind of a sales-led growth, but you'll have a little bit of virality built into the product, and that gives you incredible tailwinds.
Yeah. I think
what have we done for you?
Yeah. I think the biggest,
write big checks.
I think Winston and I usually have like a very quick, intuitive sense of like whether we connect with someone. And it's kind of hard to do. It's not like a checklist, it's just you can kind of tell. And I think for us, the most important thing is like when things are really bad, is this someone that I'm gonna wanna like talk to? And I would say that's the thing we looked at the most, because it's like, that is when you are really gonna know if you pick the right partner. Like it's very easy when things are going well and you're getting traction. What is really hard is when that isn't happening, or you need to make a very hard decision, you need to let someone go, you need to do a complex acquisition, things like that. And so that was something like we had dinner kind of the first time, and like that connection was very much there. I think that was one. I think the product background was super interesting. I think like to me it's really unique / interesting when VCs kind of have that like operating background. I think that's important. And then the last was quick decisions. Like when we pitched to them, I think later that day or maybe an hour later, it was like, yeah, we'll do it. And Winston and I make all our decisions maybe too quickly sometimes, but like that's something we look for in partners, where they can make decisions as quickly as us. But I would say the biggest one is this someone you want to call when things are bad.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I had a question, sorry, about these domain-specific AI companies. One of the SKUs that I think, a company like Cursor works on is there's things like Diff or Tab, or even their agent products that use some of these like core research verticals. They worked on, really fast inference, KV cache, these things that were sort of coding specific. And these research verticals scaled really well for them. When you think about Harvey and the legal field, what are sort of the research or technical verticals that you guys focus on that will make your product better, that are sort of like really core and specific to legal, I guess?
Yeah. I would say the biggest is evaluation. So I would say the really big challenge we have at Harvey is, as these models get better and they're getting close to this point, the outputs they're producing are 5 to 10 page legal research memos that would maybe take an associate a week or two to generate. And if you think of how you evaluate that, as these get better, you essentially need a law firm partner to review this. And you get into this territory where it's like the cost of a law firm partner is $3,000 an hour. And so how do you build this scalable system where you can evaluate this across every practice area in litigation, in transactions, plus now we're in 50 countries, they all have different jurisdictions. So I would say one of the biggest research problems we need to solve is just, how do you tell that these systems are working well? And this is something where, for example, in coding and math, a lot of these other domains where you kind of have these provers or way of verifying, this is very easy. And in legal, it's very hard, but I think that will be kind of one of the moats you can build. That's one of the longer term ones. I think short term, there's a bunch of work of like, how do you do longer context generation? How do you connect all these different tools that associates use? How do you do planning, decompose these tasks? And then one really specific one is, how do you do really good inline citations? So this is one that like, I think eventually the foundation models will do, but that was one very early on that they didn't do. That was like a massive selling point, where if you upload a bunch of contracts and you say, hey, summarize this. It's like, as a lawyer, you need like, give me the exact clause where this came from. And doing that very well is still like pretty challenging. Yeah.
Last question.
So I forget, you mentioned how before you were trying to start an education company, and I guess like the time wasn't right.
Yeah.
When you decide to start Harvey, how was that decision process going from like the education was like very mission focused, kind of like social good, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah.
Whereas Harvey is obviously very successful at vertical, but it's also more of like a kind of like less social good focused company.
Yeah.
So I guess how was that decision process going from like kind of education into law?
Yeah, so for me, kind of like the framework of the type of company that I wanted to start was, how do you apply AI to like a societal system that could be improved? And that's kind of why I was like very passionate about education. It was something where I was fortunate to grow up in Cupertino and like went to a good public school, and so how could you use AI to like provide that to everyone? When we started Harvey, the actual original idea was, how do we do consumer legal with AI? And the idea was, how do you give everyone legal access? And we very quickly ran into like a bunch of regulatory issues. So you can't give legal advice. And it was actually interesting, we talked to the guy who represented LegalZoom when they went to the Supreme Court. And we're like, hey, can we do this with AI? And he's like, yeah, I haven't seen any AI that someone would confuse for a lawyer. And we showed him GPT-3 and he was like, oh yeah, that's gonna be a problem. And so we're like, oh, consumer doesn't make sense. But these regulations are starting to change. And so for us, a lot of the motivation was Harvey was, all of the money in legal is in corporate. Can we use that to build kind of a big business and then use this to help change the regulations and eventually start doing consumer legal, start working with court systems. So like, we're working with like Singapore Supreme Court to provide this in their courts, like provide this to like pro bono lawyers for free. And so I think for Winston and I, the mission is still very much like, how do we use this technology to make legal access better? And then I think eventually these models will get so good, you can start doing things like, how do you just improve the legal system? So that's definitely still the mission. And then I think short term, like, because of some of these dynamics, you do need to focus on the business, but the goal is very much to do social good with it. Good question.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.